welcome to Smash Writing. I am your host, Justin. Paul is hiding in the corner crying like he normally does on a regular basis.
No.
Paul, did you clean up the mess up?
No. It was a full moon.
That's the most depressing.
No. No. No.
Stop being creepy.
It's the month of October. This is
the month of October, yeah. You can be creepy, but not stalkerish creepy like that.
Welcome to another episode of Smash Writing. I am your host, Paul. This is Justin.
I've already said that. You repeated it because you weren't listening. You were busy crying in the corner.
I know. I was bawling my eyes out. Once again, we're in the month of October, so we love doing horror films for October, even though we can jump around the subjects all year round. But yeah. October gives that feel.
It has that feel. You gotta really, especially with this.
I'm not going to talk about a Christmas movie in October.
I would.
A Christmas movie in October?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay, that is like the one exception, because that is like good with both genres. That's both months. But
I've already defeated him. I won. I'm out of here. Free.
But Justin, go ahead and give an opening about the video.
About the video? We're talking werewolves. I'm very picky when it comes to two things, vampires and especially werewolves, because there's so many different styles of werewolves that there are some I really don't like, some I really like. Like the Twilight Werewolf, for example. I know a lot of people hate that movie, but I really like their werewolf. Not that character, but the way that the shape-shifting werewolf that they are interesting. I'd like to see more of them, just not that character.
My thing is, werewolves is not my specialty horror genre thing. I've watched enough, and I've seen enough to go, okay, this is what I think of them. I don't think they're a bad genre by any means. It's just not a genre for me.
It's a genre that when it hits, it really hits. But when it misses, it is somewhere in the ocean.
Now, our list, there's some...
We take some wide turns here.
Yeah. The main focus is the werewolf itself, not the genre that it's in, because traditionally you would think a werewolf is a Halloween movie, but as you can see on certain ones on our list...
It's just a horror movie.
Yeah. So, do you want to kick it off, or do you want me to kick it off?
I will kick it off. I might have to kick this list right off with Little Red Riding Hood from 2011 with Amanda Seyfried. That's why I had to look down. I can never remember how to pronounce her last name. I really liked it. It was set back in the olden days, and you have these villagers who are terrified of werewolves, and they're trying to hunt down one who's hiding within this village, and they don't know who the wolf is. And it just blends the perfect horror together with the suspense, the drama, the horror. The monster, the werewolf, looked really good in this movie. I really liked what they did with him. Amanda Seyfried is Amanda Seyfried. She was wonderful in this movie. It was a great time throughout, and that's all I really want in a horror movie. It's just all of those blends together. Nice wolf, great characters,
was
good
that
story.
CGI werewolf, or did they use practical effects?
I believe it was a CGI werewolf. He didn't look bad though for CGI. He looked pretty good. I could be mistaken. Could be wrong. He could be practical, but I do think it was CGI wolf.
My film really is number 5 for me, because it's an action film, but
the monsters, they blend the line together there.
Yeah, Underworld, starring Kate Beckinsale. Now, it's vampires versus werewolves, and you don't see the war against those two in a lot of film series.
Yeah.
They hardly make mention that.
You have to go back to like Dracula versus the Wolfman and stuff like that.
And I think that's why I generally... It's an action movie. It's a dark action movie that, you don't know who to side for. You're either going to be a werewolf fan, or as they call them, lycanins.
But they were lycans. Those are the werewolves. They're the same thing. It's just a different thing of werewolf.
I don't want to get the whole name thing, but they're werewolves. And, though, you got Kate Beckinsale as the good vampire, if you're a werewolf fan, you still want to root for the werewolves, because they're kind of like the underdogs throughout the whole series, where they're always trying to be on the same level.
I've only watched the first one time. I didn't finish it. Not a fan. Didn't like them. Did not like the werewolves in that movie.
The one...
Lycans.
Yeah, the one part that I didn't really like too much was the love story. I mean, I guess that you kind of have to figure out the war is going to come to an end because of a love story. But then also, like, I think both sides wanted to make a hybrid, but instead of like doing the old natural way of like getting it in there, they want to mix bloods and pump it.
You can't do things naturally like that with vampires and werewolves. Learn your history, boy. They're gonna come and kill us all.
But
you first. Kill you and your donut fetish.
I don't have a donut fetish.
That's not what I'm telling everyone right now.
But I mean, it still gets props for like acknowledging some of the war that hasn't been mentioned in a lot of films. So that's why
it was a good building block for them, especially to project them in the sequels.
Yeah, the sequels have gone. Some of the sequels are better than others. It's just kind of your pick of the runt, basically, the pick of the litter. But that's my number 5.
Moving on, I'm going with American Werewolf in London. Because of course it had to be there. Okay, it would have to be there. It tells the story of two friends who are backpacking through Europe and they're attacked by a werewolf. The one is killed and the other is just infected. I really like the practical effects of the friend haunting him throughout this movie, trying to warn him, like, you're gonna be a werewolf, dude, you gotta watch out. And the guy doesn't really believe him until, obviously, the first full moon and he turns into the werewolf. I love the practical effects behind his transformation. I wasn't a big fan of the way the wolf looked, but that is due to the age and everything. That's the best they had to work with. When you factor that in, he looked pretty good. It was a solid movie. You had the love story, you had the traumatic end, not dramatic, I guess you can say traumatic ending. You had the not happy ending of him being killed at the end and not ending on a happy note, which is what I really like in a horror movie too. Sometimes that calls for it. You can't end on a happy note. And this was definitely a movie that was better for not having a happy ending.
I'm going to talk about 2 films here because his number 4 is my number 3.
Yes,
and it's basically the same. So we're just going to bypass my number 3 because...
You'd just be repeating what I said?
Yeah, basically, because we actually agree on. A lot of times when we do this list, if there is a film that we both agree on, it's going to be the same explaining. But sometimes, if we like other films better, that's where we disagree at. American Werewolf in London is his number 4. It's my number 3. Basically the same reasons. I'm more of a sucker for when monsters are supposed to be monsters. They're used in that way. I'm okay with that. That's why that's my number 3. But my number 4, just like how it goes with number 5 with Underworld, is that Teen Wolf, starring give me his name, because I literally...
Michael J. Fox? Come on!
I literally just draw a blank.
How are you drawing a blank on Michael J. Fox?
So, a lot of his films, don't know why I just drew a blank. But, once again, Teen Wolf is... probably, I would say, a American type of classic comedy.
That's sad. That's sad but true, isn't it?
Sad but true. But
when I was a kid, I loved it. It was a great kid movie.
But
watching it as an adult is kind of rough.
Yeah, it's definitely it survived the test of time.
No, it hasn't.
A lot of people know it, and that's why it goes on to the test of time. But it's a comedy, and I am not the biggest fan of using a monster for a comedy. He becomes a werewolf, and at first people are afraid of him, and then it's
dribble of basketballs. Yeah,
it becomes widely accepted that he is a werewolf.
Basketball player. He's Airbud with 2 legs.
Yeah, and then of course the thing how it ends is like. He becomes back himself in like the most important game.
I don't even remember. It's been it's been like 25 years since I've watched this movie.
Yeah,
you cannot rely on me remembering.
It's been a long time. I think I probably watched it like once or twice. And once again, I think in the lore of things, if you're just labeling it as werewolf movies like we are, then it's popular enough to survive the test of time. But for me, it's not a scary movie. It's
not supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a comedy. It's coming of age. I don't think you should use monsters in that way. You water down.
But you put them on your top 5.
Because
you're giving reasons for why it shouldn't be here.
It shouldn't be, like, in the grand scheme of things, but if you're going to label it down for werewolf films, because it minus the scary factor that was taken out of it, was a decent film. It's just comedy for me is not the deal.
Alright.
But that's why it's up there. So go to your number 3. And
my number 3 is The Wolfman, the remake from 2010. Not saying anything bad about the original, I'll let him cover that one later. But The Wolfman in 2010, it's not my favorite style of werewolf. Actually, it's probably the style I least like the most. I hate the fact that he's on 2 legs. They're more human than werewolf. But what saves this movie for me are the aesthetics. It looks gorgeous. It's set in that olden day again. You have the acting skills of Benedict Del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. And
2 great actors,
yeah,
really.
God, they're so amazing. And you could tell the love, especially with Benedict, how much he loved this character, because he just put everything he had into making this the best he could. And it shows throughout. His reasoning for coming back was great. He played the Wolfman character so well. Everything worked for this movie, which is why it's number 3.
My number 2, like I said, my number 3 was Justin's number 4, so I'm not going to repeat. But Stephen King's Silver Bullet. I am generally a fan of Stephen King's films, whether it's the most popular ones or the lesser known ones for one reason or another. You can say maybe Silver Bullet shouldn't be high up on my list, whether you don't like him or not. I didn't really have a problem. It was a horror style film, and that's what I appreciate. I don't know, I forgot what year this came out. But like many of Stephen King's movies prior to like this decade with remaking stuff, they do feel good to me. I'm not going to put this as one of my favorites of Stephen King, but with the werewolf film, it did do good. I'm fully blanking on the plot details because it's one of those films that
it's your number 2.
I know. But, like, it's been a long time since I watched.
Why is it your number 2 then?
Because it was still good. I liked it.
For God's sakes.
I just can't remember the plot fully details. Your number 2, I never really heard of.
Yeah, I can't. Well, no, you've heard of it. I've been street speeding for a year and a half that you go watch this fucking movie.
Okay, you gotta watch the X-Men.
Yeah, because there's a real comparison there. Ginger Snaps, one of the best horror movies of all time. And one of the best werewolf movies of all time. Catherine Isabella is fantastic as Ginger. Her sister, played by Emily Perkins. The chemistry between the two antisocial group of sisters who are just obsessed with the graphic violence and the gore in the world. And Ginger getting bitten by the werewolf, and just the story of her transformation and them splitting apart. You're really telling a tale of the feminism side of this also. The growing up and all of that, with the feminist side of this spectrum, which obviously I am not inclined to talk about. But the one thing that stops this from being number 1 is the fact I do not like the werewolf at the end of this movie when she's turned into that werewolf. And I love the fact that when you transfer into a werewolf in this movie, that's it. You're the werewolf. There's no going back. And it's not their fault. They probably just didn't have the budget or anything to do a really good werewolf, much like American Werewolf in London. But the acting and everything else, the actors in the story in this movie, it is such a great story. It is just so close to number 1, it's not even funny. Ginger Snaps, if you haven't watched it, I'm telling you to go watch the movie. Go watch the movie! For a year! I've been telling them to watch this movie.
Yeah,
I've never even heard of this movie.
We'll have this discussion next October too.
We probably will.
My number one is The Wolfman, the 1942 film. Now, what Justin praised about the remake, I don't have a problem with. I really don't. I think The Wolfman was probably one of the first films to introduce werewolves.
Yeah, it was Universal's first, I believe.
1942, black and white. It told story, it introduced the characters, and I do think you have to give props to the first. May have not been the best.
It was fine. It was just like the Wolfman got trapped in a bear trap. And like when you meet him at the beginning, he's looking through the telescope at the little town, and he sees the female lead in her bedroom putting on jewelry, trying on jewelry. Then he runs down there and is trying to buy the jewelry he saw on her dresser. Like, dude, that is the stalkerish thing I've ever heard in my life.
But
and that was just the time, though. I guess
And then if you think about okay, you're describing as a stalker, but I mean that's kind of how
so
werewolves
creepy.
Hunt. They
he was not a werewolf at the time.
His personality was suited to be
that was just
set to be a werewolf.
Even I'm watching, I'm like, this is the cringiest thing. Like, stop, just go home.
Well, they said different eras.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's got to be a different era, and they just thought this was okay.
We're talking about a film that's in 19.
You know those jewels I saw you putting on in your bedroom when you thought you were alone? I'm watching you through a telescope. Give me those jewels. Now I want them.
But like I said, I'm just a sucker, and like I says, the Wolfman in 1940. I am a sucker for black and white horror movies. There's just something about them.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm trashing on it a little bit there, but it is a perfectly fine movie. It was good. It set up everything, of course.
And you did the remake versus original on these two movies that. Like I says, I don't have nothing bad to say. What Justin just covered with the remake, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's...
you can tell which one I gave the nod to. It was the remake. Because that's why it's on my list, of course. But The Wolfman was a fine movie. Again, though, I would have put it aside. I don't like that style of werewolf. I hate it when they walk on two legs. It's not like... I don't have a problem with them walking on two legs. I have a problem with them primarily walking on two legs.
It takes away the wolf and puts more of the...
it's more man than werewolf.
Werewolf, yeah. And I said...
that is, I guess, the point, it is a werewolf man kind of deal.
It's the hybrid. And yeah, you can knock on things about the original, but, I mean, the fact that you're talking about a film that came out in 1942 and the remake came out in 2010. That is a hell of a gap to let that... And there were sequels to the Wolfman.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were sequels and spin-offs and Scooby-Doo.
But when you're comparing those two, I mean, it took that many years. You have to pay homage to that. Like I said, it's on my number one because I love the black and white films. It just adds that element that I think these days kind of taken away from horror movies. You have to really do a lot. Black and white, you really don't have to do much. I mean,
you just have to do a story. You just have to make a good story.
Well, yeah. So that is...
I got one. I still got mine. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not done.
Oh, yeah, because I forgot you started.
My number one is Cursed. I know it's weird that I'm actually putting Cursed on there because this is not a movie that's talked about largely.
When it comes out?
No, I just looked. Can I not? 2005.
Oh, so it's a more recent one.
I actually went. That's 15 years.
Crazy to think that. Crazy.
We're just old now. But it stars Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg. I know,
really?
It's weird. Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg. They were brother and sister. Lex Luthor now, Jesse Eisenberg.
Christina is like a name that she's anonymous with horror films, mostly because of the Addams Family. That's how she started, and they're sold on her because I think she's just a fan. So that casting made sense. It's the Jesse.
Yeah, he was in it. It was great. He was actually really good in it. So was Christina Ricci, and it was just a great story of it really homaged all of what werewolves were, and they brought in a ton of lore and gave it to the two of them when they were bitten by the werewolf. And you had that mystery again about who was the werewolf, who bit them, and they're trying to race against this clock, because if they don't kill the main werewolf that's biting everyone and bit them, then they are going to transform in the full moon, and then that's it. There's no going back. I mean, they'll be human again, obviously, when the sun comes up, but the curse is set in, and there's no coming back from that. So you get the mystery, and you get them trying to solve this, while you get a little bit of comedic moments of, like, her hunting down, like, she's hunting down a smell, and it ends up, like, the woman's bleeding in the bathroom, and that's the smell she was hunting down. You had a werewolf give the middle finger. What more do you want? It's a werewolf actually gave the middle finger because she called her fat. It was wonderful. It's directed by, I think it was directed by Wes Craven, or written by directed by Wes Craven.
Okay, so you know it was.
You know it's gory. You know he's bringing the gore, and he brought the gore, and he brought the laughs. A fun cast, fun director. I love the werewolves. They walk on their hind legs a bit too much, but they still look good. And one gave the finger. I mean, come on!
It's that finger. It sells Justin every time.
Just
the finger.
The werewolf giving the finger.
The finger. That's all that counts. But that's all the time we have for today. Please check out the rest of our Halloween stuff from this year.
You can check out us on a podcast on Smash Writing Podcast.
Wherever you listen to your podcast, at Apple.
WordPress, Smash Writing, smashwritingblog.com. Ton of horror stuff going on this month.
Yes, and this is our second year of doing this, so we have year one materials that you can listen to if you haven't. So
I have 14 horror movies to watch. I'll never do that many again.
Until next October.
No, never again.
Until then.
Bye-bye.